Let's start with the classic method for determining the relevance of keywords, which is called term frequency inverse document frequency, or TFIDF. In order to figure out what a text is about, we need to figure out the importance of each word. And TFIDF captures the intuition that there are basically three categories of word. There are words that occur on practically every page, so words like the and of and. They don't tell you anything special about that page. They're crucial for understanding the meaning of the page, of course, but they don't really capture what the page is about. On the other hand, a word that occurs only one time in the entire text, or is sprinkled a few times through a whole collection of documents or corpus of documents, can probably be safely ignored, at least for determining relevance in the sense that we're thinking about. A word that occurs a number of times on one page, but is relatively rare in the document overall, or relatively rare in the collection of documents overall, is the kind of word that we want to be emphasizing. And that's what TFIDF does for us. We're going to do one simple method, but we note that there are many different varieties of computing TFIDF. Okay, so for our sample text, we're going to use Darwin's book, Origin of Species, which is included in the Mathematica sample data. We can use a snippet, which gives us the beginning of the book, the introduction. When on board the HMS Beagle as naturalist, I was much struck with certain facts. We're going to be using a list of stop words too, so we grab those from all word data and store them in a list. Now TF-IDF can be used at different levels. So for example, you could compare part of a document with the whole document. That's what we're going to be doing in this example. Or you could compare one document with other documents, which is another use of it, which is quite similar to what we're doing here. In any case, the term document frequency refers to the number of times that a term appears in the largest collection, and in this case that's the number of times that a term appears in the whole book. We can use word counts on lowercase words to get the document frequency for the whole book. And if we look at the 50 most frequently occurring terms, we see that they're largely stop words, the, of, and, in, and so on. But notice species here. This is not at all a stop word, and it is in fact what this book is about. So that's very important. After we drop the stop words, we have the 50 most frequently occurring words: species, forms, varieties, selection, natural, life, plants, and so on. These words tell us a lot about what Origin of Species is about, in the sense that we can understand what the whole book is about, but we really want to be able to focus in and understand what parts of the book are about relative to the whole. So what we do is we compute what are called term frequencies. These are frequencies for a smaller unit. So let's say we're going to try to figure out what Chapter 9 of Origin is about. We can use pattern matching to pull out Chapter 9 as a string, and we can compute the term frequency, again simply using word counts on lowercase words, for Chapter 9. Here are the 50 most commonly occurring words in Chapter 9. Species, not surprising since it's commonly occurring in the book as a whole. Formation, formations, geological, period, sediment, and so on. Let's look at word clouds for the book as a whole and for Chapter 9. So, as we can see, species is important in both cases, but formations, formation, geological, sediment, these are terms that appear in Chapter 9, but not in the book as a whole. So now that we have term frequencies and document frequencies, we can calculate TF-IDF. This is a very simple formula for calculating that. As I say, there are varieties, which I will make a link to in the end of the lesson. Now we can compare the term frequency with the document frequency for a pair of common words like the, and if we compute the TF-IDF for that word, we find that it's got a negative number. So a very common word, a stop word, does not score very highly by this measure. Next, we look at words that occur only, say, one time. Intermittence occurs one time in the whole book, and that is in Chapter 9. If we compute its TF-IDF, it's considerably higher than the TF-IDF for the, but it's still relatively rare. Now, relatively low because it's rare. Now, if we look at words that occur a number of times in Chapter 9, but not very much in the book overall, they should have the highest TF-IDF fall. Look at the word tep here. It occurs 3 times in the book, and they're all in Chapter 9. If we calculate its TF-IDF, it's higher than the one for intermittence. So what we're getting is not so much an absolute score, but a ranked score. Tap here, for our purposes, is the best. Intermittence is next best. The is least good for this particular purpose. So we compute, if we map TF-IDF across the list of words in Chapter 9, we can compute the TF-IDFs for every word in the chapter, and then we can make a framed list of these in the order of descending score, and I've used the frame command to group ones that visually that have the same TF-IDF. So, if we look at these words, a tapir is kind of animal, pebbles, coasts, decay, mineralogical, tear, grinding, sand, sedimentary. These words give us a general sense that Chapter 9 is about erosion, it's about geology, it's about water and fossils. So now, what is Chapter 9 about? Well, since this is a 19th century book, Darwin provided a summary in English about what this chapter is about. It's on the imperfection of the geological record, on the absence of intermediate varieties, the nature of extinct intermediate varieties, on vast lapses of time, on the poorness of our paleontological collections. Okay, and as I say, there are other ways of computing TF-IDF. The Wikipedia page, for example, lists 5 or 6 of them at least, and there's an excellent text which is available online which can teach you a lot more about the subject if you're interested.